the successor should not try to be a copy of the founder. They're going to have to lead in their own way while still honoring the company's foundation and values.
If they don't trust them, if they don't have the same respect for them, you're going to lose employees, production will go down, the value of the business will go down, and your ability to step away or cut back is going to be greatly hindered by it.
Separate ownership from leadership, right? Just because someone owns shares doesn't mean that they should be the one to run the company or run it in the same way that you've run it in the past. Hey there, entrepreneur. Welcome back to the Scale to Sell podcast, the business owners podcast where we help you build transferable value, create more freedom, and exit on your terms. This is episode number 62, Passing the Torch, how to successfully transition a business to the next generation. So, Steve, we know many business owners that we talk to have the idea that they would like to pass the business on to the next generation. But we also know the stats are not in their favor. For those businesses that go the internal transition route when it comes time for the owner to exit the business, we've said it on here before, but we'll say it again for point of emphasis. Only roughly 30% of businesses succeed to that next generation, 12% to the third generation, and 3% to the fourth generation. So not exactly a line of success in the way that people have been just kind of handing the business off to the next generation. Not exactly a great track record there.
There's ways to succeed in it and many ways to fail in it. And, so assumptions, hey, it's just because it's my kid, they can take over and they have the same skill sets that I've developed through trial and error. Or my staff will keep working with them, or my clients will want to keep working with them. And maybe they like them better. Maybe they're better equipped to run the business than even you. And there are those cases. But why chance it? You got to make sure it's your largest asset. So we want to make sure. So if you're going to transition over there, you're probably looking for income. If you're like most business owners, 80% of your net worth's tied up in the business. So you're going to become the bank. So instead of getting a windfall all at one time and maybe mitigating taxes, working with our tax team, but you're going to become the bank and you're going to fund it over the next 5-10 years, maybe, or they're going to pay you over the rest of your life. What happens if it fails? What happens that Christmas, party that you're doing gets kind of awkward if you're having to go back to work or jump back into the business or they've defaulted on the loan. So there's things that we can do here to make it more successful.
Absolutely. So the question that we're framing out here for today is, how do you prepare both the business and the next generation so that the transition actually works and avoids the horrific stats of where things currently are in the industry? So before we get into some of the specifics as the business owner and as the next generation, things that they should be focusing on, talking about, we want to look at first the question of why. Like, why do most business transitions fail? So a few things that we're going to talk about here. One, no clear succession plan, right? How many founders do we know that have delayed the conversation because they didn't want to talk about it? Maybe you're one of them. We'll talk about that here. It was not on the priority list at the time of how to go about that or what that process should look like. And so by delaying it, they never really set one up. And so you don't really have clarity on who's really qualified and ready to take over and how that process should actually happen.
It's assume. You assume. You assume because your kids are working for you, or some of them anyway, you assume that they want to run the business. That's a pretty big assumption, because they see, maybe they know what you do, maybe they don't know what you do. And so, but yes, you got to have a clear laid out plan. There's so many other things that tie into that. Let's say you've got your kid that's 25 years old. They just graduated from college. They got a degree. You got somebody else on your team, a key person that's been there for 25 or 30 years, longer than this kid's been born. And now you're going to hand the keys over to them. Are they going to hang around with you? Will they work for this and relate to the younger person? There's so many things that can go wrong here.
A lot of bad things can happen when we assume what we think we know about a situation. But again, without a defined process, the transition just becomes chaotic. And that's not the type of transition you want to lead to set the next generation up for success, for sure. Number 2, the founder won't let go. Seen this one. Either because you individually aren't ready to exit the business or completely, right? Sometimes, as business owners, when your identity has been built as a business owner, it's hard to separate some of those things. Or other times it's you're in a partner situation and one wants to stay, one wants to leave, and then things get complicated there too. All sorts of dynamics when you think you want to leave or you say you do, but maybe your actions say differently and you're not really preparing the next generation to be able to take over well.
It happens a lot. Maybe your kids are well equipped. You've got everything documented and it's ready to go, but you're right. You can't because you're right. You're the guy that owns X number, whatever business. And when you go out and about, you build it up and that's kind of, your thing. Hey, I'm the CEO, president, founder of whatever company. And to give some of that up and now just be a past owner of it. It doesn't have the same kind of influence and who knows, but we've had, so whether it's from that type of standpoint or whether it's just you love the day-to-day grind. It's addictive sometimes being the entrepreneur and giving it up to maybe even, and if you have, even if your kids are qualified to take over the business and they're ready to go, they can get turned off by it and maybe they go in another direction and all of a sudden, oops, that can derail.
Yeah, your transition plan goes out the window. Well, it can really undermine that next generation if it's a thing where like you say you're going to do it, but then, the date keeps changing and things keep evolving in a way that is not really intentional. It's more of, a delay. Yeah.
Your words say one thing, your actions say the other.
Yeah, for sure. The next one they were talking about is one that you brought up already. The next generation isn't prepared. Maybe it's they lack outside experience. They have the book knowledge, but they haven't had a lot of time on the job and seeing the different aspects of the job to be able to connect with people and to run it well, to know how to lead in that area. They haven't had the same leadership development or built the credibility with the employees that they need to in order to really earn that respect and to be able to transition well to that next generation and take over and continue on that legacy.
You don't have the work ethic, or maybe, you're great in sales, they are not. That some of that can be farmed out.
Yep.
You can bring other people in and that could be a good thing actually, but you can't assume that everything that you're great at, they'll be great at it, right? And we've seen stories about, once mom and dad made it look easy and now mom and dad are sitting down on the beach in the wintertime in their new place in Florida, and you're back grinding it out. The kids are back grinding it out, working 60, 80 hours a week and for less money because they're paying you still a full-time salary because that's part of the buyout. And they're again, grinding it out. And it's sometimes there's just so many things that come into consideration right here.
The last one, family dynamics replace business discipline. So what happens when you have sibling rivalry issues, unclear roles, questions about compensation, or, just very emotional decision-making? All of those things can play and create all kinds of havoc in these types of transitions if you don't prepare for them properly.
Yeah, it's difficult with one kid. You get multiple kids, 2, 3.
Or some that are in the business and some that aren't in the business. And what does that look like legacy-wise?
That helps. Yeah. That comes into play as well because they want theirs. They could be in a whole nother industry, but your legacy, right, is the business. And, if you haven't accumulated enough other assets, something happens to you, they want their cut. And now all of a sudden you've got infighting going on and it's, it can really mess up a family. Or one person one of your kids you're grooming to take over the business may not be the best one. Sometimes it's the quiet one sitting over in the corner, just taking it all in that can really step up and really, so you need to identify, or if it's going to be split equally between the two, spell out their different roles. Who's going to be in charge? It can't be more than one person in charge. I mean, in a partnership, I guess there is, and so you can come to some understanding there. But with siblings, sometimes that personal, that family side gets, hey, I'm the older, I'm the this, I'm the that. And so it just adds to complexity, not to mention, as you mentioned, and we've mentioned, about how the other employees get to relate to them.
Yeah, for sure. So at the time of this recording, we are in the middle of March, which means basketball season, and which is always one of my favorite times of year. But this has been a topic of conversation consistently. So for context purposes, we just finished the round of 32. So moving on to the round of 16 here. And the commentators have had lots to talk about in terms of programs that have had good transitions because of the steps that we're about to talk about in the next segment of what the founders must do, what the next generation must do. And those programs who, to use the analogy, did not transition well at all, right? And so, like, on the one hand, you've got, like John Shire at Duke, who they're talking about, okay, this past weekend, they were having a conversation after one of the games, and they were talking about how little credit he gets for the smoothness of that transition going from Mike Krzyzewski and 5-time national champion, head Olympic coach, like just incredible, to continuing on that legacy of having a high level program that's had a lot of success early on in John Shire's head coaching career and is continuing to do well, both in recruitment and their forward looking nature of how they're running the operation to the success that they're seeing on and off the court. And then you look at other programs that are having difficulties with that. And so one of the ones that's come up recently is North Carolina, right? So the rival UNC, and having Roy Williams and going from what an incredible coach he
Hall
was
of Fame coach
to now Hubert Davis, who there's a lot of speculation, like, is he going to be back next year? Because in 5 years, he's had 3 teams that either didn't make the big tournament or lost in the first round. And they're like, you've had some talent, but things are not working in the same way. We're not seeing the level of success that North Carolina has come to expect of their basketball teams.
Both of those coaches, Hubert Davis and John Shire, are both proteges of the other coaches, Roy Williams at UNC and Shire at Duke. And the point being is that relating it to businesses, they were groomed to take over those schools. And well, we don't know what's going to happen with Coach Davis at UNC. He may hang on. He may go on to be a Hall of Fame coach there, but there's pressure on him right now because he hasn't performed as well as what those fans at UNC expect, right? They expect winning titles all the time, or at least competing every year, getting into the Final Four, not exiting out in the first game. So same thing. All we're making as a point here is that just because you're grooming somebody doesn't mean that they're going to be the right fit for your situation, whether it's your business, your team, whatever it might be.
The point that one of the commentators was making this weekend was, I think that it's often expected that because, Shire was stepping into a high profile, quote unquote blue blood team, that it was just automatically going to be smooth. And the point was no, because look at what happens in other cases where it's not that way. There's been a lot that went into that to be able to make it successful, and a lot of intentionality has to go into a business transition if you're going to do it well, and if you're going to see the type of success that you want in that next generation.
And to relate to your business like this, since in college ball, football, basketball, the NIL deal where they can get paid has changed the landscape, that where they can basically enter a transfer portal, go to another school and get paid more annually. It has really changed the coaching style of these teams. But your business, maybe it's AI, maybe it's other issues that can transition your business. And if you're not fleet of foot or don't have the right people, process, and all those things in play, can come back. And so the analogy there, the examples here are really relevant, I think, to the business owner landscape we're living in right here today. Think about this. And I don't know if it applies to our businesses or these businesses, but I saw a stat just recently. It said 50% of all the white collar jobs right now will be greatly impacted in just 12 months. It may not even exist. Right. So I don't know what your business is, maybe a roofing company, auto repair, whatever it might be, but AI is impacting everything. And so if you hand your company off to your kids, even as equipped as they could be, things could change here really rapidly. But
being able to adapt and be prepared for those types of how do you weather new changes and what what's coming on the horizon is a big deal. And one of the things that they were talking about with Shire, to bring it back to this analogy, before he had ever coached his first game as a head coach at Duke, he had hired a manager of the team who's specifically focused. Like, I think he's one of the first coaches to have done it.
The general manager, like in the NBA.
Yes, to handle the NIL issues for the players and working on those things, to be able to, like, from the get-go, before he ever had his first game, understood that things are changing and we have to adapt in order to make it work. And just having someone like that who can step into those roles and have a team around them to support them is going to be crucial as we talk through what the founder is going to do and what the next generation has to do to succeed here.
So in some cases, we have an owner recently was going to transition over to his son. And then after conversations, he goes, it wasn't going the way he wanted. He goes, I think I might just sell it, harvest the equity. And if he wants to start another business, I'll do that. Well, that's a better certain thing, because one, you don't have to worry about AI or whatever changing your business. There's that. Or your kid running it in the ground. Now, the downside of that is they may take it to a new level and you would have gotten more money, but it's all a risk. And so maybe some cases,
it's understanding your exit options.
Yeah, understanding those exit options. And sometimes you can help your kid on something they may like better. The son, daughter, is there an industry, something that you like better than this roofing company, right? Something you want to do. They might have an interest in something better, and you might become their investor to help them get that business started and just harvest and exit on your own terms.
So the first thing that we're going to talk about in terms of what you can do proactively is going to be from the perspective of the founder. And then we'll look at what the next generation should be thinking about from their perspective going forward to help make this a strategic success. So the first one is start the conversation early. And this is one of those, just like we talk about with exit planning, being good business planning and not something that you wait to do. This is something that should happen early, and that these questions should be addressed. Do my children or the employees, if you're doing an internal transfer to employees and not your own offspring, actually want the business? It sounds like a basic question, but you'd be surprised how many times people are surprised by the answer that they receive too late into that process. So there's that one. Are they capable of leading it? And what role, here's a key one, what role do I want to play after the transition? A lot of business owners have not gotten that far to think through what they want that role to look like. Are they just going to truly step out and not own anything? Are they going to own it but not run it? What does that relation look like, and what involvement will they or will they not have in the future?
Over 90% of owners would like to have some kind of relationship in the business, and some would never relinquish control at all. But they understanding that time marches on and you age, you may not be capable or willing to do it any further. But no, that's an important one, no doubt.
Number 2, separate ownership from leadership, right? Just because someone owns shares doesn't mean that they should be the one to run the company or run it in the same way that you've run it in the past. That could mean, especially like we were talking about in the sibling context, if you've got multiple kids that have been either in the business or outside of it, there could be owners, board members, passive shareholders. Doesn't mean someone necessarily has to be the CEO in order for them to have an influence on what the company is doing. It's all based on them, their roles, what that transition should look like, and who's qualified to be able to take it over.
Yeah, kids that aren't in the business still want their cut if something happens to mom and dad, because unless you have enough other assets or life insurance in place to buy them out, buy their shares, and you could have that buy-sell agreement in place. But considerations, yes.
Number 3, build leadership structure around the next generation. So again, successful transitions usually involve strong executive team, mentors, advisors, people who have been there and can help them in that transition. And even outside influence, coaches, people that understand what these transitions look like and how they can come alongside someone who is taking over a position from a founder in order to have a successful next step. Again, giving everything that you can, the tools to succeed, to be able to step into a new role is going to be crucial to have success.
You will take it to the next level if you take these things seriously.
Here's the next one, the last one that kind of gets a little squishy sometimes with business owners. Define a clear transition timeline. Transitions rarely work when they're just vague, right? Like we've seen it before. Business owner says they want to step away, but then it's not really, as we were talking about a little bit ago. But the ability to create some milestones or some thresholds based on what's happening in the company, either time-wise or, you've reached a goal in order, and that's going to be, when you're able to step away. I saw one recently where they had laid out, and this may not be for everyone. This is just, for example purposes. Year 1, the successor runs operations. So they're kind of stepping into a role, learning it in real time and being a part of those different things. By year 3, the successor was going to lead in the strategic decision-making of the company. And then in year 5, the founder transitions to that advisory role. So again, maybe that's the timeline looks different for you or how that works out. But being able to give that person, one, the opportunity to see, okay, what does life look like in the business with me in a new role like this, gives them practice. They know what to expect. It's not just like a title transfer and then it's like, oh, now I'm learning now that I'm the CEO or whatever. Again, clarity builds confidence inside the organization and outside of it. So giving them that practice and giving them the timeline to be able to learn and grow. And for you as the business owner to give feedback and to be along there training that next generation for what that looks like can be a huge difference maker.
Especially if it's going to be your profit center. If
Yeah.
they're going to pay you out over time,
Yep.
It's a good runway to run on, to have that glide path to start cutting back, enjoying life, playing golf or pickleball or whatever your hobby might be. I've had, and going in another direction, I've got business owners that want to completely exit right now. Don't want to sell to an internal family, but like one wants to go into full-time ministry. And so he has a passion, or maybe it's, hey, I'm not ready to fully retire. I just don't want to do this business anymore. I want to cash out, and I have a passion in some other related business that I want to give it a whirl. And so, but having these things, especially if you're going to transition internally again to a family member or a key person in the business, will allow you to keep your hand on the steering wheel and give up control a little bit as time goes on until they prove themselves out.
Absolutely. So that was what the founders need to do. Again, start the conversation early, separate ownership from leadership, build a leadership structure around the next generation, and then define a clear transition timeline. All of those things are going to help get both the organization itself and your customer base familiar with changes that could be coming and what to expect and make sure that they are covered as well. Next is what the next generation must do. If they're going to transition well from their perspective, one thing they should do is gain experience beyond their current role. Oftentimes you see this where maybe they've been in one part of the business, in one department, but they really don't have a grasp of the overall organization. So giving them the opportunity to build credibility in different aspects of the business, learn from different leadership styles, gain that perspective that's going to help inform them as a leader can be really beneficial for them.
Work in sales, work in service, work in payroll, and just have some strong working knowledge of what everybody's up against.
Yeah.
And so it's
build those relationships.
You don't have to be an expert in each one of those, but you've got to at least have a good working understanding.
Number 2, earn the respect of the team. So demonstrate competence. It's your job, right? Literally no one likes the person that gets handed something because they are, it's nepotism, right? Same. Yeah. And they're not actually qualified. They don't have the competencies there. That's always frustrating. Humility, the willingness to learn and grow into those roles, right? Respect is earned through leadership, not inheritance. It's not something that you just get because you have the same last name or you have that familial connection, but something that is built over time. And so taking the time to invest in those relationships and in learning the business itself is crucial.
It'll crush a team. It'll crush a business if that happens, right? They understand the name, the name thing in their kids. They understand to a certain extent, but that whoever that kid or family member is, or even a key person in the business, not related, if they don't trust them, if they don't have the same respect for them, you're going to lose employees. Production will go down, the value of the business will go down, and your ability to step away or cut back is going to be greatly hindered by it.
Number 3, understand the founder's vision. And this is one of those, like, understanding the past sometimes helps you unlock, an understanding of both the founder himself and where the company has been and where they could go from there. Why did they start the business? What values shape the company? And understanding what decisions were most important. Why did they make the decisions that they made? Because until you've been in that seat of making decisions that impact an entire company, it's hard to fully appreciate what that role is like. So anytime you can be intentional about understanding the values and how to keep that culture going in the same direction without negatively impacting it in that transition is really important for the success ongoing.
If they don't know the culture of your beliefs, so how they get to continue on with it, And it's not a family related thing, but Cracker Barrel recently, last year in 2025, changed their whole format. New CEO wanted to change and make them more modern, change everything. There was such an outrage.
Did not understand the brand.
All the money that they spent in redoing the restaurants to make them more modern. That's why people go to Cracker Barrel. And so I don't know if the CEO is still there, but they put the smackdown on them really quickly. So if it's a family member wanting to rebrand, move away from the mission, the culture, that vision from the founders originally, that's probably not a good thing, or it can't be. Maybe gradually over time or something, a tweak of that. But, a lot of people will gravitate and do business with you because of that founder. They liked him or her and want to continue doing business with it. And they don't like, some change is okay. Big change, radical change. Sometimes if you got a strong company brand, people don't like that. They'll go down the street.
The last one that we're going to talk about is develop their own leadership style. So the idea that the successor should not try to be a copy of the founder. They're going to have to lead in their own way while still honoring the company's foundation and values. And you were talking about this earlier in the context of their skills. You were referencing it with the idea of maybe they're not the sales guy, or maybe they have a different skill set than that. But personality wise too, you can have different ways to lead that are still valuable and still viable in that context, and recognizing that, a Tim Cook is not going to be a Steve Jobs. You're good luck if, you're stepping into that role and trying to be that other person, and it's not you. It's not authentic to who you are, how you lead.
Apple's still doing okay.
Yeah, they're still doing okay. They may have a different personality, but in terms of the leadership and who they are and their leadership style, they can still be successful even if there's some differences there. Recognizing that and not trying to be a copycat in a fake way is an important lesson to learn.
Some businesses that were okay, they were doing okay, and the kids now with new leadership styles and other experiences and different educations, sometimes they carry it to a level that the founder could have never dreamt of doing.
Yep.
Sometimes we get comfortable as owners out there and we get in a cruise level. Hey, we're making good money. We don't want to rattle the ship. We don't want to risk anything. So we just kind of keep going. New leadership in there, younger person, a little bit more aggressive, sometimes can make better decisions. Again, scale it up where the business is many times the size it was prior to them taking over.
Absolutely. So again, this is all about, if we were to sum up this episode, it's about taking the time to be intentional and to start early in the conversations that you're having about what this exit could look like and who's the right fit for the job.
Only 30% of the time is it a successful handoff of the company to the next generation. It gets worse after that. So we want to increase those odds. And some of these simple steps can increase that odds. We want it to be 100%. If that's what you want, 100%. It won't be that. But even if it's 50 or 60% and you have greater odds, it's your baby, it's your largest asset. We want to hand it off carefully. And we want to give our kids every option to succeed. not set them up for failure.
Absolutely. So go to scaletosell.com/post. We created a list of 15 critical questions that families should ask before transitioning the business. Emphasis on the before transitioning the business. Or you can click the link in the show notes below to access that. Really is a continuation of what we've been talking about here, of things to consider and have that when we talk about starting that conversation early, some things to consider as a part of that in order to help make that transition even better, hopefully a much higher rate of success than what the stats currently are, because you followed that system, because you are being intentional about having those conversations, planning it out, and preparing the next generation to be successful. Again, scaletosell.com/post or click the link in the show notes below. Until next time, keep scaling.